Donald Trump and many of the world's most powerful leaders will be heading to Hamburg for this latest G20 Summit. And it's not overstating things to say that the next few days may decide how the world responds to some of its most pressing problems. I say that because there is a genuine divide between Donald Trump and some of the other leaders who'll be here in Hamburg as to how to respond to issues of immigration, climate change and trade. There will also be some who question the way that Donald Trump sought to look at Islamist extremism in the same context as the threat of Nazi Germany and how that was fended off in the 1940s. So there'll be some real divides, and of course in the run-up to these kind of summits there's an awful lot of lobbying, different groups trying to encourage their leaders to take one policy on or another. Let's try and understand that a bit better. Morrell Andrews is from an organisation called Youth 20. She's joining us live here in Hamburg. Hi, Morrell.
Hi.
So you and how many others have been trying to get your message across?
73 delegates from 31 countries altogether.
Okay, and you were telling me you came together earlier in the month, and the idea was that you found some points of agreement.
Yeah, so we got together and we negotiated the policy, the 15 main areas that the Germans have identified as priorities. And we got together and wrote a communique that was delivered to Chancellor Angela Merkel. And hopefully our countries will be able to follow up on that and incorporate that policy in their G20 communique.
I have to say I've covered quite a few summits over the years, and quite often there's a youth element attached to the summit. There's sometimes a sense that it's there to tick a box, but perhaps the people with real power aren't listening. What's been your experience?
Well, the fact that Chancellor Merkel took 90 minutes out of her day to hear our policies, ask us questions, and debate some of the points, it really showed that she cared. So it didn't feel as much that it was just a box being ticked. However, we'll be looking to the outcome of the communique at the summit in the next few days to see whether or not youth are recognized as critical partners or just that box to tick.
So what were you telling her to do?
Well, we covered 11 of the topics. So we talked about how youth unemployment is a huge issue and how there's a skill gap when it comes to digitalization and more advanced economies. We reinforced that civil society strongly supports the Paris Agreement and that countries need to urgently take priority on the issue of climate change. We talked about refugees and how we want our societies to be welcoming and the systems to be stronger so that people are able to come in and thrive in our economies.
Now, Donald Trump would agree with you, youth unemployment is an issue, but he would also say perhaps the best way of protecting jobs is for countries to protect their own interests, to step away from the kind of free trade that Angela Merkel supports. Where did you reach on that issue?
Well, one of the key points was that we recognize global trade is an absolute must in the way that our global economy works. But we need growth that's inclusive and involves everybody. So avoiding corporations and the rich population hiding their money away in tax havens and really looking towards policy that lifts everybody up.
As I'm sure you know, not very far from here in a few hours' time, there's going to be a very big protest. People who object to the G20, object to the way that we organise our world. What do you say to people who have those profound concerns about the leaders coming to town?
I think there's a definite grievance that people have raised. And it's fabulous that they're coming out and voicing those concerns. The point is to have it in a peaceful way and hopefully not have a violent protest. But I think it's great that youth are getting involved in trying to hear their voice.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Rita, just a couple of points to mention. It's absolutely certain that thousands of protesters are going to turn out. It's also certain that thousands of police officers here in Hamburg will be keeping an eye on what they're doing. What we don't know is how that protest is going to play out, but of course we'll keep everyone posted here on BBC News. I think the other point to make is, with this anti-globalization protest coming up, in some ways many of the leaders who are coming here to Hamburg accept that the current iteration of globalization has not been working, that in some ways that contributed to Donald Trump's victory, to the Brexit vote, to even Emmanuel Macron winning. And so the challenge for all of these leaders is to say, all right, well, if it's not working for everyone now, what's our response? What's fascinating about this summit is that Donald Trump and some of the other leaders fundamentally disagree on what that response should be.